What's up, B?
What's up, Heather?
We are bringing things back a little closer to home today. We have been out there hanging with the big boys lately.
Yeah, we haven't exactly spent a lot of time recently on our local spirits.
No.
We've been busy making our way through Sazerac's approximately 1 billion labels.
1 billion. I think you have to be our age or older to get that reference.
Yeah.
It's time. Thank you. It's time to profile something a little smaller and more local. I would like to point out, though, however, that we could do more of that if our state wasn't so tortured when it comes to these things.
True, ABC Board. Still waiting on your response to our interview invitation.
It's always an open invite.
Come on down.
Come on the show. We'll put a chair right here.
Torture.
Before we dive into today's tasting, I want to remind everyone out there to please hit like and subscribe and share our show with your friends.
We're getting close to our goal of 200 subscribers so that we can do our live show. Keep up the sharing and subscribing. You can also follow us on X, Facebook, or Instagram. She loves to interact with you. Send her a message or leave her a comment.
Comments and messages give me endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people don't kill their husbands.
Wow, that took a weird turn.
B, it's a movie reference. Did you not get it?
No.
Did I make a movie reference you didn't get?
Obviously.
Oh, one of the top 5 best days of my life. It's from Legally Blonde. It's a phenomenal film. You need to check it out. It's phenomenal. Anyway.
Phenomenal?
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Final word. Anyway, back to today's content.
I'm sure it's right up there with Casablanca.
I mean, it's in the conversation.
Yeah, they're both movies.
Before B's head explodes, we're taking a quick road trip down to Greenville, South Carolina today to 6 and 20 Distillery.
We are. Actually, Katie and I took that road trip to Greenville, South Carolina to discover 6 and 20.
Technically, that's true. But you left me behind, and while I was working, while you two went and frolicked at a fun distillery. Clearly, I'm fine. Nope. Clearly, I'm fine with it. I've accepted it. It's okay.
I can tell you're fine with it.
I'm moving along. So 6 and 20 starts right off combining the old and the new in whiskey. They have a modern grain-to-glass, science-based approach that they combine with some legend. That's a recipe for success, right?
Why does everyone have to have a legend?
Because it makes it mysterious and interesting. And
You're going to tell us the legend, aren't you?
Of course I'm going to tell you the legend. Buckle up.
History with Heather.
But is it history if it's legend?
Let's get into that today. That's what they wanted to hear. That's why they tuned in.
So, for an esoteric conversation on the bisection between history and legend, please see our other podcast, Boring as Hell. We're up to 1 subscriber and it's his mom. The name comes from an old South Carolina legend. There is basically only one fact in the legend that everyone agrees on. The girl in the story was a Cherokee Indian named Isaqueena. Past that, the details vary from person to person and storyteller to storyteller. In essence, though, it's a tale as old as time. She fell in love with a man. Past that, he might have been an English trader, he could have been a silversmith, or he might have not been an English settler altogether. He might have been a member of the Oconee tribe.
Oh, all right.
Whoever he was, her tribe was getting ready to attack. It was very Pocahontas. So she went Paul Revere style, riding to warn her lover, and then on the way decided to name several landmarks, the names of which are still used today.
She did what?
Somehow, as she was going, she named 6 Mile Creek and 20 Mile Road, and...
So they were using miles at this time.
Look, it was very Sacagawea, okay? She was very ahead of her time. Just go with it.
And miles.
And miles, yes. She had an odometer, a very primitive odometer that she used.
She used the sun, right?
Okay. Back to the legend. Oh my God. So her tribe was not happy that she went to warn her lover. And so they chased after her. And then, of course, in all legends, there has to be a dramatic ending. So she and her lover jumped off a waterfall to escape. And they either died or they lived happily ever after.
Well,
no one's really sure. That's up to the listener. So
it didn't end in divorce and a splittage of either they died or
there was no
happily.
joint custody.
No joint custody.
You know what? There's no middle ground. They can't have just landed, swum, had a nice conversation with
Found
their
out that they
tribe,
weren't into one
split
another.
time between the two. Be like, you're totally not worth jumping off a waterfall. I'm gonna have to let you go now. Either way, it's up to you. You can end however you feel
It's like very Thelma and Louise. Let's just keep going.
But
this was a fun story.
No, I'm not done.
Oh, wow.
At the end of the day, though, she did have the waterfall named after her. It's still called Isaqueena Falls.
That's pretty awesome.
Worth jumping off, I guess.
Do you have a waterfall named after you?
I sure don't. I haven't jumped off of any for a lover, though, so...
Haven't met one that's worth it
50
yet,
ways
guess.
to leave your lover is one jumping off a waterfall.
Waterfall.
Are you proud of me for the Paul Simon reference?
I'm very proud of the Paul Simon reference.
Thank you.
So that was a fun story. So how does this lead to 6 and 20, the distillery?
Okay, right.
25 minutes later.
That is kind of the most boring part of the story, honestly. The distillery's original location was at mile marker 26 of her 96-mile total mile journey.
So 20 and 6. Mm-hmm. Kind of like 25 and 6 to 4, the Chicago song.
Sure.
Okay, keep going.
Nope.
Nope.
That's it.
Wasn't
That's
like
the
that?
story.
Oh, well, that was a bit anticlimactic.
They began back in 2011 with founder David Rad, who wanted to build a company that reflected all that was unique about upstate South Carolina, including legends. They have a grain-to-glass focus and employ several people with a science background. You can find all that on their website. And like many new distilleries, they started with vodka and gin, because you can push that stuff out on the market while the good stuff, whiskey and bourbon, have time to age.
I sense bias.
Absolutely, I'll totally own that one.
Fair.
We actually have two of their whiskeys today. We're going to start with their first of its kind, 5-grain bourbon. Now, it has a really unusual mash bill, which I'm excited to try.
Okay.
It combines corn, soft red winter wheat, barley, black seashore rye, and the unusual one, Carolina gold rice. Then it's aged for 3 years in new American oak barrels.
Now, per their website, the aroma notes are smoke, spice, and sugar. For taste, we should get cinnamon, vanilla, and black pepper.
You ready to give it a try?
Yep. And before we do this, the distillery was very nice to us. The bar staff was fantastic. We did laugh about the legend, but it's a gorgeous place to visit. And they are very nice, and they're very accommodating.
Their website is great. You can tell the New Guard this is a New Guard type of distillery.
The tasting room is fantastic.
So it smells like a farm. I smell the corn.
That's one of your favorite descriptors.
You like it too.
It's not a bad descriptor. It's a good descriptor. When we smell that, we smell corn.
And tobacco.
And wheat.
And wheat. Barley.
I get
barley.
I
actually get a strong barley smell.
Yeah, I get tobacco smell. I get tobacco leaf smell.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the barley's coming through very strong in this one. And like the corn too. But it's almost more of a corn husk smell.
I do get the smoke aroma.
Yeah.
When they say sugar, maybe that's the corn smell.
I get it a little on the back
end.
It's
a little sweet smell to it.
I'll have to say I'm not getting a ton of spice.
No.
And maybe that's because we talked about the mash bill, so that's what's in my mind. And so I'm smelling those components. Yeah, but I'm not getting a lot of spice.
I'm not either.
You ready to taste?
Sure.
Cinnamon vanilla is not what I get. But I like it. I maybe get a little vanilla on the finish. Maybe a little cinnamon up front. I take that back. Like when it first hits your palate. Okay,
so the black pepper for me is at the end. And it's on the mid-back to back of the tongue. Mm-hmm. It has a very drying effect. Mm-hmm. I taste the rye and the pepper more than I smell it.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons I'm pausing. Mm. The smell I was expecting one thing. The taste I'm getting something a little different.
How so?
Well, I didn't smell that pepper. Mm-hmm. But I do taste the pepper on the back end. Mm-hmm. I don't taste spice.
Not how we traditionally view spice, which is like your baking spices or something like that.
So, spice, spices.
Are you getting cinnamon at all? They said we were supposed to, but maybe an essence of it. And cinnamon has a little heat, so maybe that's the heat at the end.
That could be. And there is. And the more you sip, it's got a little heat. And the heat I would describe as...
It's not overpowering.
Peppery, cinnamony. I taste the smoke, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't know where that smoke comes from. But they claim it's in the smell, and I agree that it's there. Mm-hmm. Seashore rye. I wonder if that gives it some salty
air. That salt air.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd love to ask them about seashore rye.
Mm-hmm. And where exactly it's from. Seashore, for what it's worth.
I think I remember them telling me that it came from somewhere in the area. If I get this wrong, 6 to 20, I apologize. I thought they told me that the Charleston area or that that southern half of South Carolina near the coast. I could be very wrong.
But I mean, that would make sense. Seashore was capitalized, so I don't know if that means anything or not. That's pleasant. It's pleasant to sip. I will tell you, it's not my favorite aftertaste I've ever had, but I really like the foretaste in the middle. The aftertaste just leaves me, it's almost a little bit bitter. There's not a lot of sweetness there.
Agreed.
But it's almost, maybe it's that like little bit of citrus we sometimes get. When I say that, I usually mean more the rind than the actual fruit. Yeah.
I think it's solid. I think when you're comparing a distillery that is young, that is in a non-traditional bourbon state, I don't think it's fair to rank that and be like, oh, why does ranking this against a Bardstown distiller that is established with a rick house that has been there for 150 years, I don't think that's fair.
No.
They're not going to have that inventory.
Right.
I think they've done a really good job of representing
Upstate Carolina, South Carolina, and make it.
In their words, upstate Carolina.
Right,
that's
the
what
Carolinas.
They would say.
Yeah.
Greenville lies a little closer to the western edge, so he's getting that Blue Ridge Mountain Water concept.
Absolutely.
The use of rice is very South Carolina for those of you who don't know.
It is very South Carolina.
So I applaud them. It tastes a little young.
It is young.
It should taste a little young. And I think to support a local distillery, if you're in the area, you should get it.
Absolutely.
I think you should go give it a taste. They make excellent cocktails there. This is what they used to make the cocktail. The cocktails we had were fantastic. And it's one of those places where they're making their own mixing juices. They're making they're curating. Is that the word, curating? They're curating their own recipes, their juices, their mixes. Make an excellent drink. Make an excellent smoked old fashioned, by the way.
And the more it breathes, the more I get more of the flavors.
The more it breathes, the smokier it gets. Either I'm inventing or I'm tasting some of the salt.
No, I think it's there. It's that fresh air salt. And there's a difference in your fresh air, almost like your fresh mountain air versus your coastal air.
Oh, yeah, there's a significant difference.
That has, well, for our viewers who might live in landlocked states, they might not know. So.
Thank you. They appreciate that.
I think this one
For those of you who live in a landlocked state, salt air is more prevalent over a salt ocean.
Anyway, I think this one has more of the salt air than the fresh mountain air, if you'll allow me that opinion.
Sure.
Anyway, I would rank this one That Dog Will Hunt. Where would you put it?
That Dog Will Hunt, and proud to have it part of the Carolina family.
Yeah.
Next up, we have their wheated whiskey. Now, I understand where founder David Rad was coming from when he set out to make this product. He wanted something his wife would enjoy sipping. Now, before I get all the comments, I'm not at all insinuating that women don't like bourbon.
No.
I'm insinuating that my wife...
I do not particularly like bourbon.
That's where I'm coming from.
And B is actually very good at always being on a mission. He pays really close attention to the tasting profiles that she prefers in both bourbons and scotches. And he's always on a mission to find... So if anything we taste, he's either like, oh, this is something that Katie would enjoy because of her palate, not because she's a woman.
Yeah,
so that's the tie-in there.
Obviously, she likes bourbon, and rumor has it she's a woman. So we discussed in our wheated bourbons episode... They tend to be sweeter, smoother, and easier to sip.
I'm excited to try this one. This one was also aged for 3 years in New American oak barrels. Per their website, on the nose we should get vanilla and maple, which is pretty typical of your wheated bourbons. And the taste is smooth with notes of caramel, vanilla, and maple.
Before we begin, let's read this back label. Okay. This is very American. Whiskey inspired America's greatest achievements. Whiskey electrified America. Whiskey hardened steel, laid railroads, and struck oil.
So whiskey is Superman?
I think it's very interesting that you have a group of people in this country, a growing group of people, who think that alcohol is the bane of civilization and it is now the evil of everything. Man, we're going right back to the 1920s.
Aren't we?
And then you have another group of people like... we have a country because people like whiskey.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two distinct groups. We should toss out Republican, Democrat. We should have
Whiskey,
two parties.
non-whiskey.
Whiskey, non-whiskey.
Our country, in fairness, has some derision towards the South for some fair reasons.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting with certain things like whiskey. It's like you might as well slap a seersucker suit on everybody and they're going to stand up there and they're going to say, like this says, taste the rich flavor, feel the rich smoothness, own the rich heritage that is old money with a capital O and a capital M.
Are we in Charleston?
Are we in Charleston? You can take whiskey and it's like you said, there's either this perception that it's like, oh my gosh, you must be some horrible alcoholic who steals your kid's bread money and goes...
Or I'm standing on the veranda.
These are old views. Or it's interesting because if you instead cast it in this light of, let's talk about it as the American heritage and,
standout here
people
Rainbow
putting themselves up by the bootstraps. You know, you've got people like my parents who are teetotalers who are like, oh, that's so interesting. Did you know that there were moonshiners where we're from? I did know that, actually.
Yeah, right behind the house.
So it's so interesting, like you said. People are such a juxtaposition.
All right, so what do you
Apparently, I
smell?
read my dictionary before this episode.
I get the vanilla.
I get the maple.
All right, I do get the maple.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty classic weeded smell. It's a little more subtle than some we've smelled before.
Now, in comparison to their 5 grain,
Smells very different.
no smoke. Yeah, it's easy.
So right off the waterfall.
Right off the waterfall. Good job.
I prefer this one to the first one.
What was her name?
Isaqueena.
Isaqueena. That is gorgeous.
Isn't that a cool name?
Isaqueena Falls.
In our previous episode when we talked about weeded bourbons, this one to me is not quite as thick of a mouthfeel.
It's 80 proof.
It's not quite as sweet.
Yep.
Exactly. But it's very pleasant. And unlike a lot of other weeded bourbons, whiskeys, the wheat sweetness doesn't overpower the grain flavors in this one like it does in a lot of others. I still get some of the grain flavor.
That's caramel up front and vanilla.
I was about to say caramel.
There's caramel, yeah.
But then do you get the grain towards the back end?
The finish is better to me.
Than the first one. I agree with that.
The finish is better.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a little bit of corn in the finish?
Yeah.
A little corn, a little wheat, obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I like
There's
it.
sweetness.
I like, though, that the sweetness is combined. It's a weeded sweetness, but it's also a corn sweetness. So you're tasting the components a little more.
Now, the spice in this is not overwhelming, but there's a peppery, smoky, salty essence to this. Mm-hmm. This is just... For those of you who've not spent any time in Lower Carolina, in the summertime in the Charleston area, it is not cool.
That's an understatement.
It is not cool. The
devil shows up to Charleston in the summer and says, "Nah, I'm good. I'm gonna go back home."
It's rather warm.
So hot.
And I could see where this is very pleasant in South Carolina. I can see where this is very pleasant in the spring. It's pleasant right now.
I'd throw that over a little ice, cool it down.
Ooh, this is pleasant.
Yeah, it's very pleasant. It's light, easy to sip.
And I think that this is a good entry. I know it's a whiskey, but this is a good entry whiskey, right? I think it's very approachable. I think if someone's new to whiskey, this would be something you could pour them that they can enjoy and it's not going to overwhelm them. It's very pleasant.
I think that, too,
pleasant.
If you're new to the grained glass, this is also a good one to start with.
So what are you going to rate this bad boy?
So I love the corn finish on this one. It feels southern. And I'm going to rate this also That Dog Will Hunt, but it's a higher That Dog Will Hunt for me.
I'll agree with that. Sometimes when you give gifts for someone who's new to the community, or you're giving a thank gift or a Christmas gift where you don't want to give... The big thing around here is you have those cool Moravian cookies, which I really like. That's a big thing at Christmas.
Those are good. Yeah.
So if you have someone who doesn't necessarily want Moravian cookies, they want some liquor, but they want something that's kind of North Carolina.
Yeah.
This would be really cool to do that. I don't always think about bourbon with food, but I think this would be great with shrimp and grits.
Oh, yeah. Or some fresh corn on the cob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could drink this with a meal.
I really liked both of them. I think my favorite was definitely the weeded, just because I like the flavor profile. And I really like the finish on this one. I wish I could have come with you and Katie when you visited the distillery.
Because we had standing room only front row for Weezer.
That's part of it.
On the Voyage of the Blue Planet tour?
That's definitely part of it, yeah. Anyway, we're definitely going to make another trip down there soon.
Well, let's hope so. But until then, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with a friend. And if you're in the South Carolina, Greenville area, check them out. They're good people. Cheers, y'all.
The name of the distillery comes from an old South Carolina legend.
I'm willing to bet this is the first time in the history of the Bourbon Channel on YouTube that the word esoteric was used.
Bourbon's been missing me.
That's right, yep.
I mean, I'm no Duchess of Islay, but I bring something to the table, okay?
Duchess of Islay.